In North Carolina say they are not stopping their search for a missing Central Florida soldier.
23-year-old Kelli Bordeaux vanished after leaving a barn near Fort Bragg this weekend.
As West 2's Ike Diaz reports, police have questioned Bordeaux's husband and the man who gave her a ride home that night.
Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you, and if you're returning, thanks for coming back. I'm so excited to see you again. On my channel, we talk about a true crime story, usually on Tuesday. This one might be up a little bit late because I decided to spend some time with my family instead this weekend, and so my filming schedule was pushed back a little bit. But I do post a true crime story once a week, and then I try to hit something on Saturdays if I'm not feeling too burnt out that week. I do have a full-time job, and I also have a family, so sometimes filming can be kind of difficult, as well as the editing process. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the bell icon, so you can be notified when I upload. Only if you want to, no pressure. But that also leads me into my next thing. I do want to give a quick warning that some of the things that we talk about can be kind of heavy. So if that's something your mental health cannot handle, just do me a favor and click off this video and I will catch you somewhere else. But your mental health will always be so much more important than any YouTube video ever will be. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and dive into today's story. Today we're going to be talking about Kelli Bordeaux. This is an insanely interesting story, or at least I think, as to how her killer was caught. So this is Kelli. She was born in December of 1988 in St. Cloud, Florida. That's where she grew up. That's where she spent all of her childhood. She was the youngest child of 3, and as you can see, she was absolutely stunning. But not only was Kelli very beautiful, she was lively, she was fun, she was bubbly. She was just one of those people that everyone tended to gravitate towards because she was just such an infectious personality. Kelli was small. She was only 5'1", but she was tough. She was tougher than nails, and she had absolutely no problem standing up for herself. Her personality was not only bubbly, but she was very fiery and almost feisty in a way. Kelli had always wanted to help people, and she always wanted to travel. So put these two things together, and the military just seemed like the absolute perfect choice for her. Kelli met and married a man named Mike on June 12th of 2010. At first, things seemed really good for the couple, and they seemed to be really happy. But when Kelli decided to enlist in the military, that's when things kind of started going a little bit sour. Mike was not super excited about her joining the Army, and it was a pretty tough time in their married life when she had to go to boot camp. But after that, she was stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. It was then that Mike moved with her to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and they lived in an off-base apartment. After the move, Mike was having a hard time finding a job, and his drinking problem became pretty severe. It got so bad that the couple got to the point where they decided that they needed to do a trial separation. So Mike moved back to St. Cloud, Florida, and Kelli stayed in Fayetteville to kind of see if maybe the separation could help their relationship. Kelli really enjoyed her time out with friends. She would frequent a bar named Froggy Bottom. This is where her and her friends would go out to sing karaoke and dance and just have a good time. But since Kelli was so beautiful, she would often get attention from many men, from multiple men when she went out. And one of those men's names was Nicholas Holbert. Nick was actively trying to get Kelli to pay attention to him, but she had completely friend-zoned him. They were just friends according to Kelli, and that was how she wanted it, but that did not stop Nick from trying. On April 14th of 2012, which was a Friday night, Nick asked Kelli if she wanted to go have drinks with him at the Froggy Bottom. He did work there, but so that's why he was there as frequently as he was, and Kelli right away agreed. She had been working all week and she wanted to just go out and enjoy her time, so she agreed to to go to this bar with Nick, but it was more so she was going because she would never drink and drive, and Nick had offered to give her a ride. So that's why she was going with Nick. Nick saw this as a date, but Kelli definitely did not think this was a date at all. This was just her going out with friends, and Nick just happened to be a friend who was willing to give her a ride so that she didn't have to worry about how much she was drinking that night. Kelli did have a couple of drinks that night, but according to our bar tab, she didn't have that much to drink that she wouldn't have her wits about her. Like, she would have still been able to function properly. And even in security footage of her, you can tell that she just wasn't that intoxicated. But Kelli went missing that night. She was nowhere to be found, and when she didn't show up for work on Monday morning, that's when they knew that something was very wrong. Kelli was a very responsible soldier, and all of her higher ups definitely knew that there was something very wrong when she didn't show up for work. This was not like Kelli at all. Going to her apartment, Kelli was nowhere in her apartment, and once again, this was very strange. Like, she just disappeared into thin air. So the search for Kelli was on immediately. There was over 500 people who volunteered to come and search for Kelli, and they did ground search, they did searches with dogs, they even had helicopters up in the air looking for her, and they couldn't find any sign of Kelli anywhere. Now, initially there were 3 people that were persons of interest during the investigation into Kelli's disappearance. One was the obvious, Mike, her husband, and then the other was another obvious one, Nick, the person that she was last seen with. But the third was kind of shocking. Police were able to find out that Kelli was having an extramarital affair with a man named Justin Thompson for over a year. In fact, the night that Kelli went missing, she was actively texting Justin. And Justin was even the one who had reported her missing, or had initially found out that she was missing. The night that Kelli went missing, Justin knew she was going out with Nick. Justin had been there when Kelli met Nick, and Justin did not get a good vibe from Nick at all. He said that he was kind of creepy. In fact, in the text messages that he sent to Kelli that night, he said to bring your pepper spray because he's weird. Kelli kind of threw this off and said that she would be just fine. Now, Justin was also a person of interest in Kelli's disappearance, which makes sense. They thought maybe Justin and Kelli had some kind of argument, leading Justin to hurt Kelli. But the thing is Justin and Kelli's relationship was actually going really well. Justin was actually planning on moving to Fayetteville to see if they could possibly take this to the next step, maybe marriage, after Kelli and Mike's divorce was official. Justin also had a pretty solid alibi. He was in St. Cloud, Florida when Kelli went missing, and they were able to verify that, so Justin was soon ruled out. The next was Mike. Police thought maybe Mike had found out about her extramarital affair with Justin, and maybe that had made Mike snap. But again, Justin said that he was actually in St. Cloud, Florida as well during the time that Kelli went missing, and they were able to verify that as well. So Mike was also not involved in Kelli's disappearance. And on top of that, Mike didn't know anything about the extramarital affair until after Kelli went missing. He had no clue Kelli was seeing somebody else for well over a year. The night of Kelli's disappearance, Kelli had sent Justin several text messages saying, "Call me, call me, call me." Justin did try to call her multiple times, but she would never pick up. Then eventually Justin got a text message from Kelli saying, "Hey, I made it home safe. I'm going to bed. Call me tomorrow." Justin did try to call her the next day, but she didn't pick up. Justin tried multiple times calling and texting, just trying to get in touch with Kelli, but she did not respond to any of his text messages or pick up any of his phone calls. Justin initially called police that Saturday saying that Kelli was missing, but police didn't take him seriously. He called on Sunday again saying that Kelli was missing, and again the police did not want to take a statement from him. It wasn't until Monday morning, when Kelli didn't show up for work, that police started taking Justin's phone call seriously and finally took a statement and considered Kelli a missing person. This was valuable time lost in the investigation, and police were kind of at a standstill. They couldn't find any trace of Kelli or where she had gone. Nobody knew where she was at all. This is when a man named David Marshburn gets involved. David was a private detective from North Carolina, but he wasn't really doing missing person cases. He was mostly doing looking for fugitives who had skipped bail.
How many criminals have you captured, would you say?
I'd say it's in the hundreds, I'm sure. If I had to guess a number, over 500, at least.
So you reason that if you've been able to capture criminals on the run, you could solve this mystery.
Yeah.
So David thought that maybe his expertise could help in this situation. He was also really interested in Kelli's case, and it was because he had seen an interview of Nick doing an interview, and David said that he could tell immediately that he was lying and that Nick was involved in Kelli's disappearance. David started looking into Nick's past, and he was able to find out that Nick was actually a sex offender. He had assaulted a 5-year-old girl viciously to the point of it was an absolute vicious crime. And he had never registered as a sex offender in Fayetteville. So while police were also kind of suspecting that Nick might be the culprit in this case, they were not able to tie him to Kelli's disappearance. But since he had not registered as a sex offender in Fayetteville, they were able to put him away for 1 year. But when Nick got out of jail, that's when David went to work. He soon found out that not only was Nick working at the bar, the Froggy Bottom, but he was also living in like a makeshift camp area behind the bar, and at the time that Kelli disappeared. So the way David went about this was fascinating to me. Initially, he approached Nick and started asking him questions about Kelli's disappearance. He did make it clear that he was not working with the police. He was a private investigator that was just trying to find closure for Kelli's family. Little by little, he stopped talking about Kelli to Nick. He would slowly taper off and talk less and less and less about Kelli's case and just try to build trust between him and Nick. He would do things like go get food for him, go get what he needed for just about anything. If Nick called David, David would drop everything and run and go get David whatever it was that he needed, because he wanted to build that trust between him and Nick. But it would be months of this for David. He would do everything for Nick to the best of his ability, and he went on doing this for months, and he was getting absolutely nowhere with Nick. So this is when David started doing some very unique things to try to get Nick to confess. David drew up his own personal plea deal. Like, it wasn't a valid plea deal. It was a fake plea deal that David had drawn up himself. In this plea deal, it said that if Nick confessed and apologized for what he had done, they would treat it as a mental health case. He would have to get mental health counseling, but he would live in an apartment complex where he had a computer and would be able to get work done, and it would basically be like parole. David brought this fake plea deal to Nick and gave it to him, and while Nick was reading it over, it seemed like he was actually contemplating this for a while. He was really contemplating taking this deal. But all at once, he shut the file and gave it back to David, saying, "I'm not taking any plea deal." So David was kind of at square one again. He didn't really know where to go from here. So when this failed, David decided to take it a step further. This time, he wrote up fake indictment charges and gave them to Nick. He told Nick that he was being indicted for Kelli's murder and that he was actually being watched currently. Like, there was surveillance teams currently watching him. He even went further and put people out on the street in like Crown Vic cars and had them like snapping pictures of Nick and all these things. And Nick was genuinely freaking out. He was like, they're watching me, they're watching me. He was freaking out. So this sent Nick into like this paranoid state, and that's when he told David that he wanted to take the original plea deal. So Nick took this plea deal, signed the plea deal, and then took David to where he had buried Kelli's body. The night that Kelli went missing, they were all having a good time at this bar, and when Kelli went up to the bar to pay her tab and leave, Nick went out to his car and was waiting for her. He was gonna drive her home. The bartender that was helping Kelli check out told her that, hey, you need to be careful with this guy because he is a sex offender. When Kelli walked out, she walked past Nick's car and past Nick, and that's when he jumped out of the car and confronted her, saying, hey, like, where are you going? I'm gonna take you home. She called him a child M-word, and that's when they started fighting. Somehow Nick was able to wrestle Kelli down to the ground and he hit her in the head with a rock. He then took her out to where he would eventually bury her. The text that Justin got from Kelli saying that she had made it home safely was actually from Nick. After David found Kelli's body, he called the local police department and they were able to arrest David. After Nick took David out to where he had buried Kelli's body, David called the investigators investigating Kelli's case, and Nick made the second confession to that police department, and he was taken in. Nick pled guilty to first-degree kidnapping and murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So what are your thoughts on this case? I definitely find it fascinating how David Marshburn was able to find Kelli's killer. It was such an unorthodox way of solving a case, but I think it worked so well, and they were finally able to put the killer behind bars, which was the justice that Kelli's family deserved and Kelli deserved as well. During the trial, her family was really upset, understandably so, and it looked like David would not look at them or anything, but he did ask the family for forgiveness, which they did not give him, and I completely understand.
The mother of Kelli Bordeaux came face to face with her killer today.
I was always taught to dislike, but you, Mr. Holbert, I hate.
Today, a judge sentenced Nicholas Holbert to life in prison after he pleaded guilty to killing the Fort Bragg soldier.
He did ask for Kelli's family's forgiveness, and I don't know if I could ever forgive a man for doing something like he did. But let me know your thoughts on this case down below. I'd really love to know what you think. But that's really all I have for you today. So I hope I see you again next week. I have a really big case that I've been working on coming up next week, and it's been taking up a lot of my time. So I hope to see you next week for that one. And yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, and I'm sending you so much love, and I will see you next week. Bye.